Let's discuss William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell and Ulver's interpretation of that work. Hi, welcome to Garage Geek. So I'm going to start the daunting task of going through William Blake's work of The Marriage of Heaven and Hell along with his illustrations. I'm going to be showing you what he wrote, and we're also going to hear snippets of Ulver's work from this 2 CD. Let's start with a little bit of background. So The Marriage of Heaven and Hell is a book by English poet and printmaker William Blake. It is a series of texts written in imitation of biblical prophecy, but expressing Blake's own intensely personal, romantic, and revolutionary beliefs. The work was composed between 1790 and 1793. The title is an ironic reference to Emanuel Swedenborg's theological work, Heaven and Hell, published in Latin 33 years earlier. Swedenborg is directly cited and criticized by Blake in several places in The Marriage. Blake wants to show that the material world and physical desire are equally part of the divine order, hence a marriage of heaven and hell. Within the marriage of heaven and hell, there are the proverbs of hell. Unlike those of Milton and Dante, Blake's conception of hell begins not as a place of punishment, but as a source of unrepressed energy, opposed to the authoritarian and regulated perception of heaven. He wants to reveal the repressive nature of conventional morality and institutional religion. The diabolical proverbs are provocative and paradoxical. Their purpose is to energize thought. Some interpretation. Blake's theory of contraries was not a belief in opposites, but rather a belief that each person reflects the contrary nature of God, and that progression in life is impossible without contraries. Some influence. This is probably Blake's most influential work, and its vision of a dynamic relationship between a stable heaven and an energized hell has fascinated people for centuries. Aldous Huxley took the name of one of his most famous works, The Doors of Perception, from this work. This, of course, inspired the name of the American rock band The Doors. Huxley's contemporary C.S. Lewis wrote The Great Divorce about the divorce of heaven and hell in response to Blake's marriage. Benjamin Britten included several of the Proverbs of Hell in his 1965 song cycle, Songs and Proverbs of William Blake.
The busy bee has no time for sorrow.
More recently, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk takes its title for one of the Proverbs of Hell. And boy, that is a good book. There are 27 plates in the manuscript, and each plate is like a book page. Throughout the text, there's both poetry and prose, and many of the plates have illustrations either on the side, in between, or half page. Every track or every song of Ulver equals one plate from the text. So the poem starts off, Rintra roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air. And Rintra is a character that William Blake made up for his mythology. And Rintra is personifying revolutionary wrath. He represents the just wrath of the prophet.
Rintra roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air.
Plate 1 focuses on two characters, a just man and a villain. And the just man is walking along on a path that has become perilous. And the villain leaves the paths of ease to walk the perilous paths and drive the just man, Rintra, into the barren climbs, leaving the just man to rage in the wilds. The next plate ends the argument. The number 33 is mentioned. So here I want to stop and talk about path, which is common in most epic poetry. For example, Dante's Inferno begins, midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, for the straightforward path had been lost. Midway upon the journey of our life is sometimes translated as he was 33 when he wrote this. There's also, when he wrote the Inferno, there's also 33 cantos. And so Blake writes, as a new heaven is begun, it is now 33 years since its advent. And of course, the path was mentioned earlier in the argument. He mentions for the first time Swedenborg as an angel sitting at the tomb to the entrance of hell. Then he introduces the ideas of contraries. Without contraries is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate, they're all necessary for human existence. From these contraries spring what the religious call good and evil. The next section is called The Voice of the Devil, and it is spread out over 2.5 plates.
Energy is eternal delight.
And in The Voice of the Devil, Blake explains some of his philosophy. Man has two existing principles, body and soul. Energy, normally called evil, is of the body, and reason, called good, is of the soul. And God torments man in eternity for following his energies or his evil. But there are contraries. Man doesn't have a body distinct from his soul.
Those who restrain desire do so because theirs is weak enough to be restrained.
The next section is called A Memorable Fancy, and this introduces the Proverbs of Hell.
Is called the devil or Satan, and his children are called sin and death.
In this section, a narrator is walking through hell, and he's enjoying the sights of hell, because what normally seems like torment and insanity is really the enjoyment of genius. And so while in hell, he collects some of the sayings. And when he comes home or comes out of hell, he finds a mighty devil folded in black clouds hovering on the sides of a rock. And with corroding fires, he writes the following sentences. How do you know but every bird that cuts the airy way is an immense world of delight, closed by your five senses? This ends part 1 of my going over William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell and Ulver's interpretation. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this video and if you would like me to continue with the remainder of this work. As always, thank you for your support.